Welcome to the Move Well, Live More podcast, where we discuss topics from exercise and nutrition to health and lifestyle tips for your overall quality of life. All right, welcome to another episode of the Move Well, Live More podcast. My name is Rachel. I'm a coach and creative director at Move. And today I have Matthew. He's our in-house nutritionist and coach. He is an expert in nutrition and its relationship to emotional damage. No. Sorry, emotional eating. Okay, I couldn't help myself. But Matthew, can you give us a quick intro about your background and qualifications?
Sure. My name is Matthew. I studied a degree in nutrition and continued to do a master's in public health nutrition. I usually help clients figure out what's wrong with their eating to develop a healthy relationship with food and as a bonus, lose some fat or gain some muscle. Yeah.
Wow, okay, cool. So you guys know he knows his stuff, right? Masters in
Public health nutrition. Yeah.
Really, really cool. Regarding today's topic, in the last episode, we talked about differentiating good and bad stress and how to navigate them. Today's episode has a link to that topic and it's in the area of nutrition, obviously. We are going to talk about stress eating and its impact on weight, how to understand the cycle and find solutions to overcome them. And at the end of our podcast, we hope that first of all, you'll learn what is stress eating and how to know if you're doing it. Number two, what causes stress eating, what causes you to stress eat. And thirdly, 3 strategies to manage stress eating. Let's explore how stress can impact our eating habits and weight and discuss practical solutions to break free from this cycle. Before we begin, if you'd like to hear more content about movement, health and lifestyle from us, please like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss an episode. And let's get to it.
Let's go.
All right. So Matthew, what do you think of today's topic? Majority of clients, struggle with emotional and stress eating. Do you have those?
Yeah, of course. So I think stress eating, what we call food and mood, is an under-discussed topic in terms of food. So I think people always look at food as like, oh, okay, only need to look at it when it's like weight loss, diet. But people are not talking about food in the context of your mood or how you feel, or maybe even realizing what am I doing it or how do I stop it or manage it, right?
Yeah, that's really true. Oftentimes we talk about food in terms of like how to achieve certain fitness goals or body composition goals. But today we want to talk about something that's actually more common than we think. I can say that as a coach, I noticed that a lot of clients, they do struggle with this, whether they identify it or not, right? Whether it's out of stress, anxiety, sadness, boredom, or even grief sometimes, it's understandable that we do turn to food as it can comfort us, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But think of it this way. When you stress eat, you're using food to solve a problem. Only thing is that it's a problem that food actually cannot really solve. And what's more, most people who experience emotional eating, downside to that is that they will feel trapped and guilty afterwards. And then that begins a whole cycle of, perpetuating that behavior. And that's something we would like to address today. So let's discuss. My dear nutritionist, to start, could you explain the connection between stress and eating habits?
Yeah. To understand why we need to consider is why we stress eat, right? To look at why all these habits come. We're going to look at 3 reasons why, but at first let's see what's the mechanism, is it? Why? When we're stressed, we obviously look for comfort. And I think for most of us, it's food, or not most of us, at least a lot of us. So when you're
especially Malaysians. Yeah.
Yes. So when you're stressed, your body goes through this response. It's like a fight or flight thing, right? So you're literally getting ready to go to war because fight or flight. So what your body does, it wants to gain as much energy as it can. This is called the HPA axis for you guys, for the science geeks.
Break it down. HPA stands for?
So it stands for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Your hypothalamus senses the stress or the stimuli, whatever, and then it sends a signal to the pituitary, and then it sends another signal to the adrenal.
Okay. Tell me where that is. Let's say I'm an auntie listening
Yeah.
to this. What's the layman terms for all this?
Okay, so basically, in simple terms, your body senses stress and it sends out this hormone called cortisol, the stress hormone. So this cortisol, once it's released, your body will find energy from wherever it can get. It will convert maybe like fatty acids, amino acids, or glycogen in your liver, convert more glucose to have more glucose in your body. So you're ready to do things.
Right.
So what happens when your body is getting out all this energy, right? You suddenly have a burst of energy. You become hungry because you want to replace the energy, right?
Yeah.
So when you become hungry, naturally you look towards food. And what are the foods which are able to give you more energy?
Fattier food.
Yeah. High sugar, high calorie food, because those are like, you eat and you get a lot of energy or calories from them.
Yeah.
So I think that's why sometimes stress eating can relate to weight gain. But we'll talk about that a bit later. So let's dive into reason number 1. For stress eating. One is dietary restraint. So this is more applicable for people who have gone on a diet before. Because once you go on a diet, you sort of restrict yourself from food and you develop this mindset of what's good and what's bad for you. So you restrict yourself from what's bad, or you restrict yourself from the amount of food. In times of stress, your body can't really differentiate whether, is this an intentional restriction of food, or am I actually shortage of food? In a normal sense, like in a normal condition, maybe now, not so stressed, right?
Yeah.
We can
a little bit lah.
we can differentiate. I'm dieting now, or so I'm intentionally reducing my food. But when you're stressed, like in times of proper stress, your body is on autopilot. So your body doesn't know, is this intentional or am I actually short of food?
Yeah.
So this causes you to want to eat more things that you've been restricting yourself with.
Right.
So because of them restricting food, they sort of build up this maybe bad reputation of
cheat meals.
Yeah.
Weekend. I mean, it's the common thing that we always hear, right? Those who are on a calorie deficit, they think, okay, I go hardcore, all in, and really like eat only good foods, stay on the lower portion side, and feel like an angel with my diet. But then when it comes Saturday, or they're in the wrong environment, then suddenly, everything just cascades down to like, whatever lah, just binge everything. And then the bad thing happens is that they feel so much guilt from that. Then their mind starts to think that there's no point in
like taking care or
mindful eating anymore, because I always end up this way. So it's that vicious cycle.
So reason number 2, some people have poor interoceptive awareness of what's happening in your body, hunger, cravings. Another thing is awareness of what's happening outside your body, or your emotional awareness, which is called alexithymia, not knowing whether you're stressed or guilty or, all these emotions.
They are not able to decipher what they're actually feeling in that moment.
Yes.
Right?
So because you don't know what you're feeling, you're actually probably feeling stress, but you don't know. So you're just like, I need to do something about this. So why not just eat food because it makes me feel better?
It's a sense of like something to distract this discomfort that you're feeling in the moment, right?
Yeah. Or sometimes it could be just emotional dysregulation. So maybe you're stressed or sad, but you don't confront it. Right? You just don't think about, why am I stressed, or what's happening right now? Instead, I'm stressed, I need to feel better, so I reach for food. And the last one, this is more like physiological, what's happening. I think I described a little bit before, is the HPA axis.
axis.
So the one where your brain senses something and then it releases cortisol. So a reversed HPA axis. So in a normal sense, your brain senses something, it releases cortisol throughout your body. And because there's cortisol throughout your body, your brain wants to downregulate that, bring it back to normal. So at first, when you're stressed, there's a lot of cortisol, you feel hungry. But after a certain point of time, when the stress wears off, your brain will downregulate this cortisol and the hunger goes away. But for some people, maybe because been doing this over and over again, the response is reverse. So when cortisol is high, the brain doesn't bring it down. So then the cortisol remains elevated, and then you're constantly hungry, you're constantly searching for food, searching for things to replace that energy.
So then you feed yourself with food, thinking that solves the problem, and then there comes another set of emotions of like guilty, especially if you've had this habit of categorizing good and bad food, and then that escalates the whole negative emotions and cortisol that you're feeling there, right?
Yeah, exactly. So basically like a
A
just
chicken
like
and
a
egg situation lah. The reasons lah for stress eating. Dietary restraint, poor internal and external awareness about what's going on in your body, and then the reverse HPA.
Yes.
Right. Maybe let's have a bit of a story time.
Okay.
As we talk about this, I can recall a client that I had before. Yeah, a client, her mom and her family were training with the gym that I was at. And then the mom told me that they have this youngest daughter that is struggling in many areas of her life. She really needs help, and the mom wants me to talk to her and make her come to the gym and train. Then I was like, okay, this is not something we can force. At the end of the day, we want to respect how your daughter is feeling. But yeah, sure, I can have a chat with her. And in that chat, trying to make her feel comfortable and trying to understand and seek to understand her, what I learned was that she was someone who felt like she was the black sheep of her family. She's the youngest, and she has, older siblings that were very successful, in fact, public figures as well. She felt like she was pressured by her family to live up to the same standard, and she felt like she just couldn't. She said for many years, she's had to deal with this stress of she's not adequate enough for her family, how she might, she's disappointing her family, and she don't know what to do with those thoughts. So the interesting thing she told me was food was her only friend all the years. Growing up, whenever she turned to food, she felt comfort, she felt safety, she felt pleasure and calm. And therefore that kickstarted her relationship with food to be like this, that like food was her pillar of support. It's actually quite serious. It's similar like you getting into a relationship with someone for a long time. It's very hard to break apart. You've gotten so close, you've gotten so safe, so convenient, and sometimes even though it's a dysfunction, you just, this is all I've known. That was that client's story, and immediately I felt like, okay, this is much more deeper than just
weight loss, right?
Yeah, than just weight loss. She did have all the medical conditions. She's really young and she was obese for her age. Doctors been telling her she really needs to do something about her weight. She has knee issues that's quite bad. She has to go to the doctors quite often for injections and physio trips, and it never goes away. She even has ADHD. She has a lot of things. So I felt like, okay, what was within my expertise to help her. I definitely couldn't help her with solving those mental health issues, but what I could do was try to empower her to improve that relationship with food a little bit. So what we did was, okay, I told her, tell me the few types of favorite comfort food she would always turn to, and she's like, I love mac and cheese. Mac and cheese always gives me this really good, like,
mac and cheese is good.
Yeah, right? Start to think about it. But her relationship with mac and cheese was a whole new level. Like a mountain of mac and cheese, she can just eat non-stop. Her fullness cue will not turn off when she's having that, because it just keeps feeling good. So I was like, okay, mac and cheese, what else? So she listed down a few of her favorite meals. From there, I gathered what was her taste palette like. And then on the back of my head, my strategy was to try to not stop her from eating those things, but get into a fun conversation about, okay, let's explore new recipes of types of food that we can turn to. We're not going to break the cycle of her stress eating yet. That's not the first thing I wanted to counter, but more like next time we turn to food, we turn to better choices of food, but within that taste palette that you like as well. So this conversation was exciting for her because, you're not telling me to stop. She's like, you're so different from other experts that were telling me like cannot. But you are asking me to eat still? Just finding new recipes even? That was one way. The second thing was, whenever there was a chance to talk deeper, I did ask her, what are other things we can consider that make you feel good? Other than food, what are other things you do that you feel enjoyment, you feel pleasure? It was little things like spending time with her boyfriend to do certain activities. I said it must be easy to do. It's free, very low barrier. And then we said, why don't we just rearrange the sequence? Eating will be one of the last, and then we do these few things first whenever you feel sad or down, then only eat. So that also helped a little bit. I guess this helped her slowly recover. Do you yourself have client stories of stress eating?
Yeah, but firstly, I think what you did with her was extremely good. First, you recommended her different recipes that might have more balance in the food. And maybe later on, we can talk about how eating certain nutrients can actually help control your mood. And the second thing I think you did was really good was that you opened up that space for her to talk about how she felt. Right? This ties into what I was talking about just now, the poor awareness of what's happening inside and outside. So I think for a lot of us, especially Malaysians, we don't really talk about how we feel, even just in a general sense, how we feel, how our body feels to other people. And I think you as a coach, when you provided that avenue for her to talk about it, it just opened up herself. I'm sure she became more aware. And of course, it's not a quick fix. So this thing,
it takes time.
I mean, building up your emotional awareness and your awareness with food, it's not like diet plan where you go in 3 months and then you lose everything, whatever. It's like, it may even take years. So I'm sure that she realized that, maybe her mom realized that as well, and they saw you as, different as what the people were doing before that. So I think that was really good. Let's clap for Rachel.
Clap for myself.
Yeah. With myself, I obviously started off as a personal trainer, and later on I did nutrition coaching, which was just literally people just meeting with me, and we come up with a strategy on how to reach their goals. And basically we're just talking, we're just communicating every week. So I remember when I was starting it, right, I was a bit nervous, like, will this work? It should, like technically it should. But yeah, then after I did it, I had my first few clients with it, and everyone seemed to make progress. And I was like, what am I doing that's helping them do it? So after like reflecting, I'm like, I'm really just providing a space for them to tell me their struggles with food, tell me what went wrong within the week, and maybe how could I have managed those situations better.
I think what you were doing, in other words, was tuning their awareness and mindfulness, right, towards their eating behaviors.
So I can give you one example. This was a nutrition client I had. He's very active and he's very determined. And he seems like, I'm eating healthy, but I'm not making any progress. Obviously, I told him, this is what we're going to do. And it's like, for him, it's like, it's nothing new, right? Calorie deficit, whatever. Like, you can just Google on the internet. But what changed was like, every week there was something that he was struggling with, whether it was like nights out, or forgot to prepare lunch and he had to grab something quick. So then every week, that was the time for both of us to think about, imagine all those moments when he felt like something went off and then he was stressed, so he ate more than he was supposed to.
The cycle of guilt lah.
Yeah. We had that avenue to talk about it. Like, what were you doing before? And we also talk about sleep and energy levels, stress levels throughout the day. And I mean, it sort of helped him pinpointed, what went wrong or what could I have done better?
Problem solving, right?
Problem solving. So then it's like, the next week it happens, he's ready for it. I think in both of those examples, just having an avenue for people to talk about their struggles, their challenges, and to pinpoint what needs to be done. That's very powerful.
So fine-tuning their internal, external awareness. Yeah, so this brings me to a point, like just now you mentioned that client actually knew about calorie deficit. It's not something, it's quite common. It's something you can Google. It's something social media will keep telling you that's the way for weight loss. But actually, the difficult part of getting into that calorie deficit or that whole process of eating better, meal prepping or eating strategically is all these small things. Like if you're existingly struggling with certain type of relationship with food or a certain dysfunction with food, the point of knowing the benefits of calorie deficit won't make any impactful change here. First, I think we need to overcome the underlying issues that you have that is bringing you into a cycle of being in a calorie surplus. Right? And a lot of times, I think a lot of clients, they will only discover when you hold this space for them to talk about how they feel and then draw their attention to identifying, I actually have an underlying issue that's getting in the way of all these things I need to do to achieve my goals. Right?
Exactly.
That's why awareness is so key as coaches, holding space for the conversation to happen. Okay, Matt, I want to ask you,
Yeah.
What are some of the common consequences of stress eating on our weight and, more importantly, overall health?
Yeah, I think the consequences of stress eating on weight, I think is quite obvious, because if you look at what people mostly stress or emotional eat on, it's mostly high sugar, high caloric food. So then you have a surplus of extra food in your body. So obviously you gain weight. And I think a lot of studies have shown and proven that stress eating is related to increase in obesity. So
Give me all the textbook answers first.
yeah, and obviously there's many reasonings behind this, and everything that we went through just now. It could be because of poor awareness, or even their HPA response might be reversed.
Right.
Yeah, one thing that has made a lot of people fall into this loop is dietary restraint part. I think that has an impact to people themselves who have gone on a diet before, and to people outside. Obviously on yourself is like, if you've gone for a diet before, then you've obviously known the feelings of restriction, the times it was hard to stick to your diet plan. So then you already develop an image of good foods and bad foods. And for people outside looking at diet culture, your friends doing it or people who are doing it, then you already, from a third person point of view, also develop that belief of good foods, bad foods. And the sad thing is, this perception of bad foods tend to be high carb food, high calorie food, and high sugar food.
So what should people actually be thinking when it comes to food?
So what people should think is they should move away from this good food, bad food mindset into a more wholesome mindset. So when you think about good food, bad food, you're like, oh, as long as my diet has a certain food, it's bad.
Right.
They tend to demonize it, especially when you stress eat. You're already eating these bad foods, these bad foods.
And those who are listening on Spotify with the fingers.
Oh yeah, with the quotations, bad food. So when you're stress eating, you want the food to be able to relieve your stress, right? But because people already categorize these foods as bad foods, the food is actually making you more stressed.
Right.
Because after you stress eat, maybe it calms the stresses from whatever you're feeling.
Yeah.
Maybe. After that, you are more stressed or guilty because of what you just ate. And then maybe you are more stressed and then you eat more, right? So I think this is one of the consequences of having this mindset.
Right.
And stress eating.
So I guess what you're trying to say is people should view food not as a label of good or bad, rather than maybe ask yourself the question when you look at food, oh, what does this do for me? It's not good or bad. It's like, okay, every different food has different function, different nutrient, and at different timing, it's good. Like carbs, it's not bad. You know?
Exactly.
Mac and cheese, it isn't bad. The benefit to that is you're treating yourself a little bit, in life, but do you have to eat a whole mountain of it, 3-4 bowls of mac and cheese? Then that's a different question. You can ask yourself, what will this do for me?
Yeah.
One bowl? Yeah, that's fine. And once in a while, yeah, that's fine. Would you say that would be a better way to perceive food or to have that narrative in your head?
Yeah, 100%. I think once we can get this good food, bad food out, like I said, right, you cut the cycle there.
Yeah.
Like you might stress eat and eat certain foods, but at least without this mindset, it's just there.
Yeah.
You don't drop deeper into the rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In that sense, let's go into strategies or techniques. Okay, let's hear from the nutritionist first.
Okay.
That you would recommend for breaking the cycle of stress eating. Or maybe not breaking the cycle, just, managing it a little better and slowly get on your journey towards breaking the cycle.
Definitely we've covered why stress eating happens and consequences of it, obviously mainly weight gain. So right now, obviously we want to give some value for everyone, so that if you're a coach or maybe if you're someone going through struggling of emotional eating, you can try and implement these habits for yourself or your clients to help them manage their stress. Okay, number one is having the awareness of stress eating. Or having an awareness of why you stress eat. So basically having a space, having an avenue for you to talk or confront your feelings or whatever that's happening, right? Back to the reasoning I said before, that if you can increase your awareness of what's happening inside and outside, then you'll be able to manage your stress eating better. Based on what I just said, could you think of how would you do this in a context of coach to client, or maybe even friend to friend, right?
For me, when I think of awareness, right, I would encourage, right, people to go into a state of like, okay, let's reflect, have a conversation with yourself, or just take out a notebook and write down. Recall the moments that you found yourself doing this behavior of stress eating or emotional eating, turning to food for comfort. Now, what was the environment you were in? Okay, and what were the triggers that you noticed when that happened, or what were the chain of events that happened before? So, for instance, let's say you recall 3 times, the 3 most closest to your memory that this has happened before, and you notice that a common chain of event usually before you get to the stress eating part was that I noticed usually when I have that meltdown, that breakdown, and I turn to food is the days that I didn't sleep enough. I had someone that I knew realize this, and then you didn't sleep enough, and that started a whole cycle of you making poor decisions.
Yeah.
So that brought you into a stressful situation, from being grumpy and lashing out on someone and like getting into a fight or getting into a negative state of mind, and then everything explodes to I got to eat something now. Then being very aware that, hey, usually that chain of events has to do with, if you rewind, and you found that perhaps I just have to work on my sleep. It's not the eating part.
Yeah.
It's the sleep. And then just dealing with the root problem helps you prevent getting even to that final result of emotional eating. So that could be a very, very helpful thing to do when it comes to awareness, reflecting and just trying to notice what are the common triggers or chain of events that you notice enslaved to the problem solve.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a chain of events that happened beforehand. You can also, in the conversations, you can also think about, in a coming week, any certain events you foresee that might happen, right? So then people can start thinking like, this Wednesday, I'm packed with meeting after meeting after meeting. Or on Friday, my boss is going to have a big celebration dinner. That gives you an avenue to talk with your friend or your client on how you can prepare for it, right? Rather than, okay, this week, just go as normal and then see how it goes. And then they come out fresh, they come out happy. And then suddenly Wednesday, the meeting day comes. And then they were not prepared for it. They're like, oh no, I didn't manage to stick to my plan today because of my meetings. So on Thursday comes, they're like, I wake up, and then you feel terrible and just like, you know what? I feel so stressed now. I just want to eat more.
Yeah.
And then it goes out the window. And this is something that one of the reasons why a lot of people I work with manage to progress, because every time at the end of the session, I will ask them, so in the coming week, what's coming up? And then we can discuss around how you can prepare for it, right?
So having some foresight, plan ahead. Yeah. Like you mentioned earlier, like entering battle. The way you win a war is not by how you fight, but it's how you think ahead, right?
Yes.
Knowing your enemy, right, beforehand. Then you go in with a very strategic battle plan. You know yourself, you know the enemy, and then therefore you go into it, you're not surprised. Yeah, you have all the tools you need.
In short, strategy 1, have someone or have a coach where you can talk about what's happening, have a space, be more aware of your food, whether what has happened so you can avoid it in future, or what's going to happen so you can plan ahead for it.
Behaviors.
Yes.
And your own stress tendencies lah.
So let's move on to the next strategy, number 2. And this is one where Rachel will talk about it more.
Similar to the story I shared earlier about a client's experience, and one of the things that I did was ask her about what are other things we can think about. Let's open the options of what we can do when we are facing a stressful situation, or times that we will usually resort to food. But what if food can just be one of the options? But let's introduce other options that could also make you feel just as good, easily accessible, it's free, it's convenient to do. So list these things down. Like, okay, maybe I use myself for example, taking deep breath. It is so simple. You don't need any tool. You just need yourself and the intention to do it. Deep inhale through your nose and slow exhale through your mouth. This is something we did talk about in the previous episode. It's called a physiological sigh, and there is a lot of facts about it. So you can listen to the previous episode. So breath work, you try it, you can see the wonders it does to your system in terms of helping you pattern break and calm yourself down. So that could be one, okay? And then secondly is hydrating yourself. Sometimes you're dehydrated, you think you're hungry, and that helps you pattern break as well. I think keyword here is pattern break from that real-time sense of overwhelm that you have. Other things could be I'll grab the phone, contact someone close and I trust to just like vent out. It's fine, you know, girls, we like to vent out and all that. Then only lastly, I will resort to, okay, it's fine to have a meal. What I'm trying to do here is not avoid food. No, I'm trying to explore other ways that I can turn to when I want to try to pattern break from stress, pattern break from the negative emotions I'm feeling right now, rather than only think food is the only choice, food is the only solution. Because when you broaden your options, then you know that, you know, you're not a victim towards stress eating, you know, you're not enslaved to this, but hey, there are many ways you can go about it. And when you finally turn to food, which you should eat every day, do it in a more wholesome manner.
Yeah, so basically, in short, it's more like, when you're stressed, at least you have this toolbox, you have this list of options you can resort to before going to eating. And maybe something in the toolbox, like what Rachel mentioned, like having deep breath or like having someone to talk to, or even just moving around. Maybe this might work better than actually eating for you, right? Okay, so the last strategy that you can do to stop or control stress eating is of the mindset of there's no good foods and bad foods. So just having this mindset not necessarily might stop you from stress eating, but it might actually control you. Like what I mentioned before, if you have this good food, bad food mindset, when you're stress eating, you're probably going to be eating the bad foods. Then because of the stress from eating bad foods, you're going to have more stress. The stress isn't going to go away. It's going to be chronic stress. And then you get stuck in that loop of eating and
Yeah, can I add on to that? If you tend to label food good and bad, you make a choice. And then so happen you take the bad food, more often than not, people associate that decision with you being a bad person, or you're lousy, or you have no self-control, or you just suck taking care of yourself, and everything is gonna be so dramatic from here.
Yeah.
What we don't want to happen is that we go into this like F it mentality, like whatever lah, I just gonna rebel. You think you are rebelling, but you're rebelling against nothing actually. It was all preconceived misconceptions. Breaking away from this mindset gives you a lot of freedom when you view food. And, you know, finding that more holistic approach, like, hey, sometimes I'll eat this because it does this for me at this point of time, but I can have more control over how much I'm going to eat it and other things that I can do about it as well.
I guess in short, breaking away from this good food and bad food mindset, once you're stress eating, it can help you just stop there after you like have your snack. Or it might even stop you from stress eating overall, because sometimes you might be on a diet and then you mess up on your diet because you ate something bad, so you felt bad and you're stressed, so then you eat more, you stress eat more.
So a recap, the 3 strategies were first awareness, secondly having
a toolbox, having a checklist
of other options to manage that stress that you're feeling. Thirdly is to redefine the way you look at food rather than looking at it as good or bad and associate that with guilt, right? I guess understanding the cycle and finding solutions is really key to breaking free from this pattern. Once again, I think a common theme that I'm hearing from this whole conversation is awareness, right? Identifying,
awareness,
holding space for it.
Yes.
And then remember, addressing stress and developing healthier coping mechanisms are essential for both our mental well-being and maintaining a healthy lifestyle and healthy weight. Because as I said in the previous episode, please tune into the previous episode, stress will always be there. You cannot avoid that. Day to day, things will happen that goes unforeseen, that may not go the way we want it to. But your resilience and your ability to cope with it without the guilt, without bringing yourself into a vicious cycle of things that you do not want to stay in, you know, a negative relationship with, will bring you really far in terms of improving your quality of life. So Matt, anything to add on to that?
Yeah, so everything what Rachel said, to know as a coach or even as someone going through stress eating that it's not the end all be all when you have stress eating. There are ways to manage it, and just note that it's not a quick fix. Like you can't just find someone or your coach talks to you about nutrition and then okay, all good. No, it's a process. It might take months or maybe even a year, right? But as long as you overcome it, then you feel a lot better.
Yeah, constantly learning more about yourself and things will evolve over time. Constant reflection. Yeah. All right. So we are nearing the end of this podcast today. So we hope that this empowers you to move well, feel well, eat well, and live more. And if you enjoyed this episode, please help us reach more listeners by sharing this on your socials. And if you've got a question for us or a topic you'd like us to cover, just slide it into our DMs at Move Private Fitness on Instagram, and we'll see what we can do. Meanwhile, we encourage you to join us for the next practical lesson and podcast that we have to help you improve your overall quality of life. Meantime, move well, live more, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right, see you guys.
Bye!